Greetings, traveler. You might have played a video game where the story starts pouring out of the game, in the game are talking about their backgrounds, and no one cares. All you want to do is skip. But I think that's very unfortunate, and I think there's a better way to handle all story in games so that people who play the game actually want to hear the story and want to get to know about the background of every character. So let's talk about that today. And to put it into context, just the other day, my friend was playing a new Japanese open world action game, and I asked him to stream it to me, and I caught him right from the beginning. So he's showing me these very elaborate cutscenes, very beautiful and stylized, high action, lots of visual effects. But the problem was that I had no idea what was going on. And as I was thinking that I have no idea what's going on, my friend echoed the same thoughts, that he watched all this and he didn't know what he was supposed to do. The game showed some aliens invading Earth, and then the main character is kidnapped by his friends to be taken to a school where he's given missions. But nowhere along this sequence do we know why the aliens attacked, how the school is relevant, who these people are, why are they helping us, and more importantly, what we're supposed to do. So even though the game obviously had a very good production quality, production value, we just both were not interested anymore in the game, no matter what it had in store for us later on. So that got me thinking, well, what was so terrible about this game? And I wish I could tell you the title, but I didn't ask for it, and now I don't want to know it. So the things that immediately popped out to me and my friend were these two questions up here. So the game didn't answer why we are there. Yeah, we appeared on the screen at some point, but why were we there? And more importantly, why do all the other things happen to us? What's the reason? Why should we care about this? Now that we've witnessed this event, can we do anything about it, or do we want to do anything about it? These are the questions that the game didn't answer at any point during these 20 minutes of cutscenes and a little bit of action. So we felt really lost. I know that there's a way of doing a game where you explain all the important story parts way later on, but I think that era has passed a good 30 years ago. So nowadays, I don't think any type of content is delivered with you finding out the basics, 40 hours into the content. So is this good or bad? I don't know, but it's definitely the sign of our times. It's definitely what's current right now. So if we wanted to make rules to make sure that the story is always relevant, and in fact, it flips the situation where the player wants to know the story, what would we have to do? So here's 3 rules that I use when I make stories to make sure that anything and everything I say story related or cutscene related is absolutely relevant to the player. First of all, story is given only when asked. So that can mean that the players directly ask to know the story, either by talking to a character, having a clear expectation of what that character is going to say, or the story up to that point leaves open questions. For example, if the story is about rescuing a princess, then if we don't know how, then if the story tells us how, then that's relevant to our character's mission. So it has something directly to do with us. It's not about telling us how beautiful some mountain is. The second is delivering the story visually as much as possible. And you might have heard other game industry professionals talk about this in terms of narrative. Now, everybody has a slightly different definition of narrative out there, but I think an easy workable definition is, show, don't tell. If you want to have a little town that was attacked by goblins, rather than saying that with words, you show it. You show the ruined town, and you let the player connect the dots, which actually feels really good because the player feels like he's figuring things out. And finally, never lock attention when it comes to optional info. So when we play most games and a cutscene comes on, we always want to skip the cutscene. That's default behavior for everyone. The small nuance there is that there is this tiny moment at the beginning of the cutscene where all of us give the game a shot at keeping us interested. We're like, okay, we know this is a cutscene, we know it's going to be this unskippable, boring thing, but maybe it's not. So we give it a couple of seconds and see if really our gamble paid off. Usually it doesn't, so that's when players start skipping everything and anything the game has to offer. But if we make sure that the cutscenes and the story segments and the dialogues all obey these rules, then players will not want to skip because they are interested in the outcome, and they're interested in the outcome and the content of the conversations because they know it's relevant to their mission. It's giving them vital, useful info that are practically useful to what they're about to do. Like we said with the princess, if you don't know where the princess is and this NPC knows where she is, that's on your path to your quest. It's something you want to know, you must know. So of course you're interested. So a lot of time games show us these cutscenes and story segments that are completely optional. So you watch a 10-minute cutscene and it's beautiful and it's fun to watch and crazy things are happening, but it's absolutely unnecessary. You didn't have to watch it, and now that you watched it, you are no closer to your goal than before. It didn't reveal an important piece of information about a character. It didn't inform your future actions in any way. And that's the biggest problem here. So, in my experience, as long as story segments, dialogues, cutscenes, and the like obey these rules, they have a pretty good chance of being very interesting for the players and making players want to seek them out, especially after you train the players that, look, if I'm going to take your time to show you something, it's actually important. You want to listen to this. I'm going to give you the way on how to defeat some monster, unlock some secrets, achieve your mission, and stuff like that. So, of course, that's what the player wants to do, assuming they're still playing the game, right? So, it's very relevant to them. And here you might be asking, well, okay, but should games only talk about the absolutely necessary things and never talk about anything outside of that? No, that's not necessary. But it's a matter of where we place things and how we present them. So like we said in rule 3 here, you never want to lock the attention of the player in an unskippable cutscene or something similar for something that's not important, right? Now, on the other hand, for lore that's outside of that, down here, when the player asks for it, that's a different story. So an example is, let's say there's an NPC who has a very deep background, but it's not super critical to the mission of the player, but still somewhat relevant and maybe somewhat interesting. Dumping that background info on the player feels horrible. The player feels locked in place and he wants to skip. But if that exposition is only after the part where the player asks for this information with an action, or by selecting it in a dialogue, or going all the way to talk to that NPC, knowing what to expect and so on, then the player explicitly asks for it. So when you ask for someone's background and he gives it to you, then there's no mystery there. You asked for it. If you weren't interested, there's nobody to force you to hear it. So only when asked, or only when actively pursued, is a good way to show optional information without boring the player. And the other is actually boring, but I found myself reading books in games plenty of times when I was in the correct mood. So what does the correct mood mean? I already liked the game. I knew that the game respects my time. I knew that the story that I learned about this world was already super interesting up to that point. And I thought that, you know what, I enjoy the gameplay, but I also enjoy knowing more about this world. It's fun. I get to know something I already like better, which at that point is very interesting. So an example of this was when I was playing Icewind Dale 1 way back in the day. So I really liked that game. I don't know if it's the best game ever, but I really, really liked it. And I really liked the story of the 10 towns and of Icewind Dale and so on. Forgotten Realms, I thought, was a really cool setting. So somewhere midway through the game when I started collecting all these books, and I read a couple of them only midway through the game, mind you, not from the beginning. And I read a couple of them and those were good. I thought, well, okay, now that I know the locations and the characters and all the things these books talk about, now it's relevant to me. One that really comes to mind was anything anything about swords and kings and so on that the game mentioned. Very interesting to me because I knew the content in the game already. So not to say that books in games are terrible or that optional knowledge should never exist in a game, but I think that if it's presented in the right setting, it can be dashingly interesting as well. Anyway, that's it for my approach to story. I hope this helps you create very engaging content for absolutely all of your players. And if this helps at least one other traveler out there, I'll be super stoked. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have fun.